Thank you very much for this lovely invitation. I just could not possibly miss the opportunity to be with you. And when we were discussing the potential contribution to this conference, I thought that perhaps I could revisit a classic topic, meaning happiness, as in the Greek sense of fulfillment, the eudaimonia of Greek nature. But looking at this from a perspective that is contemporary, so how one can be, so to speak, happy online or happiness on life. So this is the topic of my presentation, and I will now try to share with you my slides. Hopefully the technicalities will be with us, and in a moment you should be seeing the first slide, which is the title. Now, with this on its way, and please confirm me that you actually see what I'm seeing, namely a blue screen with the title of the conference. Yes, brilliant. So here we are. So I will walk you through the slides that I hope will be self-explanatory. What the talk will be about is, first of all, a very quick introduction of what I mean by this Onlife idea. Not a new one, I'm afraid. I've been talking about Onlife for a while, but it seems to be finally taking roots in some corners. And then, by way of introduction, getting away from what is this digital experience that we have, the Onlife experience, moving to what we mean by happiness and how happiness can be interpreted within a digital context, and whose happiness are we talking about? And finally, in this very quick sort of introductory talk, some ideas on how to realize that happiness that we are all pursuing. So now that hopefully this is out of its way, the Onlife idea is quite simple. It's the view that the divide between online and offline does not apply anymore. It hasn't applied for a while in some corners of the world, but the pandemic has made that obviously clear and a daily experience everywhere. Sometimes if people ask you whether you are connected or not, that means that they are from the 90s. No one today goes online and goes offline. Not least because, of course, when we walk around, we have our mobile phones that are geotagging our presence everywhere. The kitchen you work in and where you cook is partly online, partly offline, maybe because of the music you're listening to, or because of the digital clock that is automatically updated, and so on. So Onlife is the sort of experience that we enjoy. The kind of habitat in which we have the Onlife experience has become also a mixed place between analog and digital. The picture that you see there is the picture of a place where the river and the sea mix together. It's called brackish water because it's neither the salty water of the sea nor the sort of fresh, in Italian we say sweet, water of the river. The mix there generates a particular habitat where mangroves grow, and it is the mangrove society that I have in mind when I speak about our information societies. It's a habitat where increasingly more and more people spend time on life in a mixed environment, where analog and digital are increasingly exchanging notes, so to speak. In other words, when you buy a car, for example, you buy a computer on 4 wheels. And that car will be driverless only if the infosphere will allow it to be driverless, just to be concrete. In that world where we live on life and where we experience an infosphere around us, our own identity is transformed. We are described by the European legislation, for example, as data subjects. And that's where information and identity are also mixing, coming together. Now, in all this world where we are data subjects, also, not only, please be careful, I mean, the human nature is boundless. I'm just stressing one aspect that today makes more sense to many of us, in terms of who we are and how we see ourselves. In this world in which, as I said, we are data subjects, we are experiencing what surrounds us as an on-life experience, and we spend increasing amount of time within a habitat made also of information. Well, what happens to the way in which we live? So, the title there of that slide should remind someone of a famous book published some years ago, Life, a User's Manual. Do we have, as it were, new guidelines on how to live properly in a world where information is the habitat, the on-life experience, etc.? Well, to be quick and clear, and these are two slides, the pro and the contra, or rather the contra and the pro. Of course, there are lots of risks generated by digital technologies within the infosphere, with the on-life experience and so on. Escapism, for example, absorption of attention, alienation, meaning distraction, manipulation, normalization of group behavior. These are all problems generated by new forms of life. Let me just stress the last one. I'm sure everybody knows what I'm referring to, but say normalization of behavior due to the fact that now I can find in the infosphere at least another 15 people who think like me or behave like me. I don't feel anymore the only strange person who likes that particular kind of, shall we say, awful food, or terrible music, or sometimes more serious stuff. Now, what the internet has done to put together, for example, child abusers is quite remarkable. I don't have to find myself the anomaly anymore, because there are maybe another 20 people I can talk to all around the world who share the same quote-unquote taste. Now, that is one of the major problems. These are all risks. At the same time, we know also about the opportunities, empowerment of even people who have a higher degree of fragility, control on our lives. We can do more and better. Enrichment, fulfillment, meaningfulness, companionship. That's the other side, the beautiful side of all these digital technologies. What the infosphere can do for us, what the on-life experience could be like. So between these two extremes, what happens to our happiness? What sort of happiness on life can we talk and discuss? At this point, I'd like to stop for a moment and consider the simple question. I mean, whose happiness are we talking about? Normally, it's the individual happiness, because we are so self-centered, but it doesn't have to be. And in fact, it shouldn't be. There are many kinds of quote-unquote happiness that we should consider in this new digital age. We might be talking about the happiness of the planet. The Happy Planet Index there from 2006 tells you, green, how better, brown, how worst the planet is doing in terms of environmental impact. And as you can tell, we're not doing so badly in Europe, but we could be doing so much better. That is not so happy planet. Happiness on life, happiness in the age of digital technology, is also happiness of populations. That's the Human Development Index 2017. And again, dark green, good, red, not so good. It's a reference to education, life expectancy, GDP per capita. And in this case too, we're not doing so badly. In fact, we're doing much better than many other places in Europe. Look at the amount of red or orange in many countries in Africa. We could and should do much better than this when it comes to that kind of happiness. And finally, it's not just the planet and groups of people, but it's also societies. Here is the Gini Index 2014, inequality. Same kind of parameters, green and red. And here too, Europe is doing pretty well. Not so much many other contexts of the world. So these three kinds of happiness, the planet, people, societies, this is also what we need to consider when we talk about happiness on life. But of course, the thought is always about ourselves, my happiness, the happiness of me, the individual, who, of course, in my mind, is always at the center of the universe. It's not, it shouldn't be, but it's very hard to resist that temptation. The person's happiness. So the eudaimonia in the infosphere, these are two technical words for the philosophers, but eudaimonia is nothing more than the impossible to translate word in Greek that says, that fulfillment, that roundness, that perfection and ability to be fully oneself that also brings happiness. Translating it as happiness, it's a bit of a limit. And the infosphere is the space that I've just described, the world in which we live today, analog, digital, online and offline. Can we understand, and I'm focusing now for a little while on this individual happiness, a little bit better? What is this happiness? And I will use now the word happiness for the rest of the talk, but remember, this is the Greek sense, when we are discussing our own personal fulfillment. Well, happiness, for at least the next 20 minutes or so, I will treat it as the incremental fulfillment of hope. The three words are crucial. Incremental, meaning that every time it's a little bit more, a little bit better. Fulfillment, meaning that it works. Of what? Of hope. So if I hope to get a new job and I get that job, that's incremental fulfillment of hope, that's happiness. If I hope to do well with my diet and every X months, every X weeks, I get a little bit of a better result in my struggle, say, against too much pizza in my case, well, there is that incremental fulfillment of my hope, the hope that I will be slimmer, healthier tomorrow, and so on. So one way of understanding happiness is in terms of fulfillment of hope. We just shift one problem for another, because what is exactly hope? Well, luckily, when it comes to hope, we have some philosophical agreement, believe it or not. Aristotle, Augustine, Aquinas, Hobbes, Hume, and even contemporary philosophers agree on what I put there in red. I put a little shortcut below the red, and I'll read it aloud for you if you're not used to those symbols. It really is just a shortcut for what the red says. But it's important to make it clear, because then it will be very useful in the next few slides. So hope is a desire about what one believes to be probable. It's fundamental, that is a desire. I want to, I like to, I hope to win the lottery. But we take hope as something better than wishful thinking or crazy speculation, because I bought the lottery ticket. It would be insane to hope, desire to win the lottery, having bought no ticket whatsoever. So in order to be rational in my hope, I need to have at least one ticket. That's why what I believe is at least probable, there's one chance out of, say, 1 million that I might actually win the lottery. So this idea of hope as a kind of desire on the one hand, that's the sort of mental attitude, the propositional approach, we would say, among philosophers, towards a particular target, a reference, which is what is probable. The mix of the two gives us hope. The incremental fulfillment of hope gives us what we mean by happiness. Excellent. So the little thing that says below is that A, Alice, H, hope, P, something, if and only if the small a, remember, Alice, D, desires, P, she likes to win the lottery. And that's the little inverted V, A, Alice again, B believes that P is the case, that she might have a chance of winning the lottery, where P, of course, is to be understood in terms of probability of a particular event to happen. Why is it so crucial to understand happiness in terms of hope, and hope as these two ingredients, desire and probability? Well, because if you want to manipulate someone, that is exactly what you need to work on. You need to manipulate their desires, and you need to manipulate what they believe to be probable. And there you are, job done. So there's a twofold strategy when it comes to the manipulation of Alice. You can manipulate Alice by manipulating her hopes so that she might actually have different sense of happiness, or you can manipulate what she believes to be probable, likely, something that could actually happen, and therefore her, not just the desire, but her belief in something. And that's what I just put there in more synthetic terms. You can demanipulate Alice, manipulate her desires by creating or increasing the desire that something will be the case. That's what happens for normal boys and fast cars. That's how you manipulate their desires. You make the car desirable. The desirability of the car will make that object part of the sense of hope. I hope I will be able to drive one, own one, etc. And therefore part of my happiness, allegedly. I will be happy if I drive one. And the B manipulation, the fact that I need to make sure that you believe that their car is something you can actually afford one day. Some of the frustration and unhappiness in our society is the misalignment between advertisement and reality. You cannot bombard a population with the advertisements of things that increase the desirability on the one hand, but they do not increase the probability of achieving what is desirable on the other. If you make them desire fast cars, but all I can ever afford is a slow little white car, which is the one I drive because I don't desire a fast car myself, well, clearly that frustration generates a sense of inequality, injustice. Why other people drive a fast car and I cannot? On that ground, therefore, the management of happiness becomes the management of the manipulation of hope, where hope is understood, as I said before, and as just a synthesis of what I've done before, some desirability plus some probability of what is desired. In that sense, what's the connection with technologies? Well, technologies, as we are developing today, are technologies of hope. And I hope that now you understand what that sentence means. The technology is meant to manipulate what we hope, meaning that the technology is meant to manipulate what we desire and what we think is achievable in terms of our desires. So incremental fulfillment, remember, the desirability and the probability. Is this just a philosopher, big words, in other words, these objects as talismans, objects that are almost incarnations of the desirability, the probability that something will make me better, faster, smarter? Well, let me just show you what happens if you know what you're doing. Remember, incremental fulfillment, every X number of times, it could be maybe a year and a half, of an object that gives you the desirability of that object, but then replaces itself with another object that is equally desirable because you need to get tired of that object. And that object promises to give you more achievability, and so on. This is the timeline of the outcome when the iPhone is released. It's a clock. It doesn't come out accidentally, ever. Every X number of months, we are going to be treated to a new iPhone. The iPhone becomes a talisman. It's an incremental fulfillment of the hope that the next iPhone will be better, faster, more beautiful. It will enable me to achieve more. It will empower me more, etc. Now, this line of development means, of course, that the manipulation is constantly there. It would be naive to think that certain kind of things that are doable by technology today were not doable necessarily just 6 months ago, when in fact, what we need to understand is that what is achievable is spread nicely in terms of incremental fulfillment in such a way that we can sell more of increasingly well-sliced pieces of technology as they come. Of course, there are technological breakthroughs, but trust me, it doesn't take a genius to put an extra camera on the iPhone. You can do that at any time. You do it at a certain time, because at that time, 3 cameras are better than 2, and 2 are better than 1. Fine, great. All this should actually be counterbalanced by something else. We should be looking to a value-driven design for information and communication technologies. what I show you is, if you like, the dark side, the nudging side of this fulfillment of hope. What it means to be able to transform technology into a technology of hope, so that what people are actually using is increasingly a matter of desirability and probability. A note for the philosophers among us who know a lot about social science and theology. You might have noticed, so let me just make it explicit, that the twofold passage in terms of vocabulary, not for today, and I will not bother you today with this, is for another talk on the technologies of hope. But just as a footnote, remember that when social science, especially political science, but sociology, sorry, in particular, emerged in the 19th century, shall we say, it needed its own vocabulary. And the vocabulary available out there, was the vocabulary of theology. So politics and social science grabbed that vocabulary and started making it its own. The vocabulary of hope has always been a theological vocabulary, but it became a social science vocabulary from the 19th century onwards. Today, we are looking at the next step, where a philosophy of technology, bluntly understood, basically what companies have in mind, not what philosophers in the Bodleian Library are doing, is hijacking the vocabulary of hope from social sciences to technological environments. Now, in that context, back to our topic, not for today, as I said, but there is another exploration here, and we're almost at the end. So bear with me, about 3 more slides or so. At this point, what is available here? Well, we could stop and reconsider. I show you that there are several types of happiness. The world's happiness, this planet, society's happiness, population's happiness, and the person's happiness. All this do not have to be in contradiction with each other. It is not true that one has to be achieved at the expenditure or at the cost of another. However, in order to get to a world where the human project tries to put all 4, the world's, societies, populations, and a person's happiness on the same plane, I think we need to change capitalism. We need to change capitalism, not in terms of abandoning it, but just change gear. Capitalism has been coupled to consumerism during the second half of the past century. It doesn't have to be. No one says that consumerism is the other side of the same piece of paper, where one is capitalism, the other one is consumerism. We can have many different kinds of capitalism. And just to put it there in simple terms, we can move from a capitalism of consumption to a capitalism of care, especially in very advanced societies. The ones that, when I show you the maps, look very much like better off than most of the others, meaning Europe. In Europe, we can actually change gear. We could, if we wanted, move from a capitalism of consumption of the planet to a capitalism of care for the planet. We have the means and we have the intelligence. We are lacking the political will to do that, but not the means and not the intelligence. Now, if that is the human project for the 21st century, for a European perspective of the future, then I would be the first to subscribe that. That would be exciting. That would be something that we could make young generations excited about. Save the world, save the society on this world. And again, not for today, maybe for the Q&A, coming to an end, this is what I have been arguing in much more, increasingly more political context, and I mean small p, not capital P, not political philosophy, but actually doing politics in terms of green and the blue. We have in the green of all environments, not just the biological, but also societal, urban, economical, political environments, too many problems to miss the opportunity to look to the blue of digital technologies, all of them, platforms, internet, web, of course, AI, but also big data, Internet of Things, and the gadgets we carry around, and not to put the two together as a green and blue to provide that human project with a feasibility that otherwise would be a bit of a utopia. It is not utopia. It's something that difficult to achieve, but definitely doable. Again, not for today. There is another talk on circular economy and other issues that we're not addressing today. Today, I'm just going to end with one more slide. One thing that you might have grasped in the background is a certain trust or faith in human intelligence and our ability to design the world. We don't have to simply describe the universe as we find it. We don't simply have to transform it. We can design it better. Now, the slide there is to remind us that the digital age is the age of design. It's not the age of discoveries, and it's not the age of inventions, although, of course, discoveries and inventions are there. But those ages are different from ours. It is the age of design, where it says that their little gadget, back to the iPhone, has been made in China but designed in California. And that's all that matters, where it has been designed, not where it has been made. It should be the age of good design for hope and happiness. I know that there's much more to be discussed, and I will wrap up here by thanking everybody who has been online so far. And therefore, with just a quick summary. The idea of human happiness has been with us forever. There are many ways of understanding it. I presented one among many, understanding happiness in terms of hope, and hope in terms of desirability and probability. I highlighted the fact that we are developing technologies that try to manipulate both desirability and probability, and therefore our sense of hope, and therefore our sense of happiness. There are also many good things that can come out of that powerful technology in our hands. It is shaping our environment, the infosphere, the Onlife existence. That's what we owe to those technologies. We live in a digital age. In that sense, we could sort of leverage the digital technologies, the blue, to do a much better job with the green in order to fulfill those four happinesses that I mentioned before: the planets, societies, everybody around us, and the individual as well. Now, I don't want to sound too optimistic, but when people ask me, and that's my final remark, do you see the glass half full or half empty? Are you an optimist or a pessimist? I think the only decent reply is I see the glass as fillable. Whatever your view is, half full or half empty, you can fill the glass. We can make that difference. If we're going to make a difference, that difference, and as the last comment, can be made and will only be made in Europe. Thank you.